Well, hello there. My name is Christopher Scott. Thanks for joining me for another one of these Basics of the Bible videos. In this video, I'm going to review the one-chapter book, the letter by Paul written to Philemon. So let's begin as we review this book. I'm going to give you in this video the big idea of the book, a one-word description of the book. I'll tell you what the key verse is, who the author was, I kind of shared that already, who he was writing to, I also let that one slip. I'll share with you the date, some key themes of the book, an outline I came up with for this book, as well as some applications. So the book of Philemon. My one-word description for this book is forgiving. Forgiving is our one-word description of Philemon. And the key verse, I believe, is verse 17. Paul says, "If then you regard me as a partner, accept him as you would me." And the him there is Onesimus, this slave that had run away and who Paul was sending back to Philemon. So that's the key verse, verse 17. Let me share with you the big idea of this book. Now, a big idea is a subject and a complement. It says, what's the book about? And then what's it say about what it's about, right? What does it say? And then what's it say about what it says, if that makes sense. So the big idea is that Paul asks Philemon to forgive Onesimus and form a brotherly bond based on their faith in Christ. Paul asks Philemon to forgive Onesimus and form a brotherly bond based on their faith in Christ. The person that wrote this letter, this book that we have in our Bible, is the Apostle Paul, who I've shared with already. And Philemon is one of what we call the prison letters. So in the Bible, there are 66 books in our Bible, 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New Testament. And out of those 27 in the New Testament, 13 were written by the Apostle Paul. And out of those 13, 4 of them we call prison letters. And those prison letters are Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon. Those 4 letters were written when Paul was in prison, when he was under house arrest in Rome. And that's the same Roman imprisonment, the same house arrest that Paul experienced that you can read about in the final chapters of the book of Acts. So Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon. Those are 4 prison letters. Now, 2 Timothy was also written from prison, but we call 2 Timothy a pastoral letter. We group those in the pastoral letters, and that was a different imprisonment that Paul experienced later on. So Paul gets released from prison, and then he goes back to prison in Rome is the short story to that long, detailed explanation we could get into. The date that Paul wrote this was likely 61 to 63 AD, right around in there. And we know that because between 63 to 67 AD is when Paul is killed by the Emperor of Rome, Nero. So obviously it occurred before that, and there had to be enough time for him to be released, continue to travel and do ministry, and then get arrested again. The audience of this letter is the man Philemon. And we learn from reading this book that Philemon was a prominent member of the church of Colossae from verse 1 and verse 2 of Philemon. We also can read about Colossians chapter 4, verse 2 about the church in Colossae. And it gives us a feeling that Philemon was a prominent member of that church. Philemon was likely saved under Paul's ministry when in Ephesus, based on verse 19. And we learn here that Onesimus appears to be carrying this letter to Philemon, right? Onesimus was a runaway slave of Philemon, and Onesimus had run away and traveled to Rome and tried to mix in among the huge population of Rome. But while he's in Rome, he meets this man named Paul. And oh, by the way, Paul knows Philemon. So Onesimus just happens to meet a man in Rome that also knows his slave owner. And as a result of hearing the gospel and getting saved, Onesimus is sent back to Philemon with this letter. A few important themes in this book are relationships, obviously, reconciliation, and then provision. That what are the odds that God would make a runaway slave meet a man that also knew his slave owner, right? Colossae and Rome were 1,000 miles away. We see God's provision in that. Let me share with you an outline I came up with for this book based on the verses in this one chapter. Verses 1 through 3 are the greeting. Verses 4 through 7 are the applause, where Paul kind of gives an applause to Philemon in what Philemon had done and the effect of what Philemon had done. Then verses 8 through 17 are the appeal of Paul, where he makes a request. He describes the earthly problem in verses 8 through 14 and verse 17. And then he describes the heavenly provision in verses 15 and 16. I know this is a lot to share in a video. I'll try to type up the notes and put them in the description down there. So we have an applause, verses 4 through 7, an appeal, verses 8 through 17. Then we have an account, verses 18 to 21, where we read about the offer that Paul makes, the authenticity of Paul's request, and the hope that Paul has for this. And then verses 22 to 25 are Paul's goodbye. So some personal applications, 3 personal applications we can make. 1, we value relationships more than requests. When we read this letter, we learn that we should value our relationships with others more than the requests that we make of others. Right? Paul does not use his relationship with Philemon as leverage to get what he wants. Right? He simply says, I hope you'll do this, and I believe you will, and this is why I believe you will, but I hope you will. So we need to value relationships more than our requests from those relationships. 2, we need to value heavenly providence more than luck. As Christians, we don't really believe in luck, but we do believe in God's provision and God ordering things in a specific way. The circumstances that God organizes sometimes suggest God's plans. So 2 personal applications thus far. We value relationships more than request. We value heavenly providence more than luck. And then 3rd, we value reconciliation more than money. When Paul is writing to Philemon, he tells Philemon, if there's any money Onesimus owes, if he has cost you anything, you charge it to me. You send me the bill and I will pay it. Paul values the relationship with Philemon and the relationship between Onesimus and Philemon more than the money that might have caused the problems in their relationship. So this is a really brief, basic introduction to the book of Philemon. Are there some things in this video I should have shared that I left out? If there are, I would love to hear from you down there in the comments. Leave a comment. What are some significant details about this book that you believe other people should know and that I should have included in the video? Thanks for watching. I hope and pray that the Lord blesses you as you study the book of Philemon. Hope to catch you again in another video. Thanks for watching, and God bless.